You're watching the Eternal Tournament Series.
And welcome back to the Eternal Tournament Series. We're getting ready for the top 8. The top 8 players have been selected. We'll get into that. But first, I need to say something real important here. The Eternal Tournament Series is run by the community for the community. And if you're enjoying the show and want to show your support and keep this awesome thing going, there are a bunch of ways to do that. We are now a Twitch affiliate, so you can subscribe, cheer, follow, stuff like that. We also have a Patreon, so you can visit the aReNGee Eternal Patreon and donate to that. There are a lot of awesome Patreon goals. We get lots of expanded article content, monthly Sunday tournaments that we've been running, larger prize pool for the major tournaments, expanding our streaming network. We're currently working on having like backup producers and maybe secondary channels in the future, stuff like that. So lots of cool incentives to keep making the Eternal Tournament Series better and better that you can help us do and achieve. So, just wanted to plug that real quick. Of course, even if you can't contribute anything monetarily, just by being here and watching and participating in chat, we appreciate even just that. That's just awesome. We love everybody there in chat. But we also love everybody playing in this tournament. We've got a top 8 to do, more Eternal to play. So, Mr. Calimdir, we've got a top 8 to cover here. We've got some fun decks and a fun match on our way here. So let's break down this top 8.
I mean, speak for yourself. I can't say I love everybody in chat, but there's some cool decks in top 8 here. So notably, I don't believe there's any Praxis decks. I could be wrong, but
there's one.
Okay, there's one. One sneaked him in there. All right. So a lot of top 8 is very good against Praxis. So people predicted that metagame and were rewarded for it. So we have 2 TJP decks in Ilya K and Marius, who is the match we're going to be watching. We're going to be watching Marius versus Bruised by God. And Bruised by God is on a really cool list that we mentioned briefly before we went to a break. Do you want to talk about it for a second?
We'll dive into that once we get into the matchup. But Bruised by God's on this really interesting Argenport mid-range deck. It's featuring Bartolo and some weapons, but not a ton of weapons. Like, we're not seeing Bart plus Silverwing familiar. It's more just other good mid-range threats like Impending Doom, the staple Valkyrie Spire Guard, Inquisitor Mokto, Valkyrie Enforcer, that sort of thing. So that dive into. But I just want to go over the rest of the top 8 here as well before we really dive into this matchup. We also have you mentioned Ilya K and Marius both on TJP mid. Eternal Hans was the only 6-0 player in the bracket, getting there with Chalice, rising above everything else. We'll see if he can continue that success in the top 8. We also have Danny Boar at 5-1 on JPF control. Hulkbuster at 5-1 on Mokto Armory. Ogre Man 4-2 with the Praxis mid-range list. So that was the Praxis mid that snuck into the top 8 despite all the hate. We mentioned Marius at 4-2 on TJP mid, and Notorious GHP rounding out the top 8 with FTJ control. So, as you mentioned, we are going to see this quite intriguing Argenport mid-range list brought by Bruised by God go up against Marius, who is on a TJP mid-range list, which we've seen TJP mid-range already today by Ilya K, but this one's slightly different.
Yeah, so I believe there's 1, 2, 3 lists that don't have time in the top 8. So 5 out of 8 have time. That's pretty interesting. We have right now we have Argenport versus TJP mid. So this version of TJP mid is a little bit different than Ilya K's version. They both kind of got there by targeting the Praxis decks with the same general game plan of big units and crystallize. But what Ilya K and Marius are doing is just slightly different. Ilya K or Marius has copies of Stand Together in his deck, so he's a little more focused on. He has like a better armory matchup, as well as like general harsh rule like Ikaria Blue and the JPF control that we're going to potentially see later.
Yeah, the other big difference is no Kothons in Marius's list, and instead the top end looks like some scouting parties up there And a couple Reality Wardens snuck their way into the main deck as well, which I'm not sure. Did Ilya have any Reality Wardens main? I guess he had a couple.
Yeah, I mean,
Either way, lots of big units, but Marius adding a little bit of a go wide thing there with Scouting Party as well. On the other end, though, is something that we haven't seen anything, at least so far today. Bruce Guy by God bringing Argentport midrange, which he's piloted to 5-1 and into the top 8 so
yeah, so I really like this list. People have tried a lot of things with Argentport. We saw a list with Auric Vigilante make top 8 either last week or the week before. This list is cutting all the cards that are kind of subpar. This is just going all in on the Bartholo Impending Doom plan. And to supplement that, he's brought in Valkyrie Spire Guard, which I said before, I think is a very good card.
Mm-hmm.
So he's all on this 4-drop plan. He's going to try and play on turn 4 an Impending Doom or Valkyrie Spire Guard, and then put a Falchion on it and go to town. He's got 4 protects to back that up, and he's got a couple other early game units if he doesn't get the big flyers. He's got Bart, obviously, which doesn't need flying because it's unblockable, and Aegis, which is great on it. So throwing the Falchion is fine. He only has the Falchion and then Inspires and Finest Hours as far as like buffing units, but that's not really what it's about. It's just like a nice evasive threat that does a consistent amount of damage. He's not super focused on like Hammer of Might or War Cries like some of these other Argentport lists have tried to do, like Oath Book or anything like that. The units that he's playing have big enough stats on them already to kill his opponent.
Yeah, it's an approach to a Bartolo deck that we haven't really seen yet, where you just jam him in as a good stuff card, and alongside all of these other flyers, just prey on, as you noted, a largely time meta right now that a lot of decks relying on blocking, and tough to block units when they're unblockable and flying over you. So this game is underway, and we'll just have to see how it plays out here.
Yeah, I think it's slightly in the favor of the Argentport deck, just because Carnosaur is good, and TJP does have a few more options than Praxis does as far as popping Aegis and removing things, but it's still overall the same general game plan, and still has a lot of the same general weaknesses to flyers and stuff.
Bruised by God has an intriguing line of play here, and a very smart one. This Valkyrie Force is the only threat in his hand, and they opted to slow roll it so they could hold up Protect, which is going to pay off because Marius has like a perma.
Yeah, it is. That's definitely the line to take there. The other thing that I think is interesting about this matchup, or something about Bruised by God's deck, the way you have to beat this deck, I think, is by going under it for the most part, or going like much larger with a real controlled deck.
So Marius then saves Permafrost here because recognizing my opponent plays Mokto, and wisely also saves it. So we've got 2 people saving it here, but Bruce, by God, can't pass up playing Mokto here. His opponent didn't deal with this other 3/3 flyer, so hopefully this one doesn't get dealt with, and Marius lands the Permafrost and gets some counter pressure with a 5/5 over 1 month.
Yeah, that was some expert play from both players. Marius is an accomplished tournament player. He's had several high finishes at invitationals, mostly with Icaria Blue, which is what he's known for. And he also kind of revived the Justice Primal Fire strategy for set 2. And then Bruised by God is just a frequently seen on top of the ladder. So both very good players.
Yeah, I think that's been evident even in these few short turns we've seen so far. Bruised by God opting to hold back the 3/3 here, maybe try and turn this Finest Hour into a removal spell, especially with the Protect backup. You're not too worried about too many shenanigans that can happen here. Opts to protect the Frog, Finest Hour, the 3/3 flyer, and eat the Seraph here.
So normally you'd think, oh, well, Bruised by God is like the aggro deck, and he's, now he's on the back foot. But that's not really how his deck functions. His deck can at any point just set up a flyer and go to town. So it's not as bad as it looks, although Double Crystallize and Carnosaur and Obelisk is going to be very difficult to work through.
Yeah, Crystallize a card as a finisher, not so much when you're developing the board, though, and Marius has to just play a 2/1 and nothing on this turn, but some frog damage. But yeah, as you mentioned, Bruised by God, it's not just some all-in combo deck. It's a true mid-range deck here. Like this, he might end up activating Bart this game. It's not out of the question.
Oh man, does he even have a target for a relic?
I guess no, right? Because it's relic. It's not attachment. He can't
Yeah,
get
you would think Bart would be able to get himself weapons, but no, absolutely
no.
not.
Thank God. But these Inspires did hit Bart, so 4/4 unblockable. Marius is at 13. Uh, oddly enough, but Predatory Carnosaur can take it out, but Marius is maybe trying to respect a finest out here because of the pauses, but it's a protect and be rewarded for this aggressive play.
Yeah, so this is looking nearly impossible to overcome. Yeah, so I think he just got lethal now, no matter how he plays it, right? Or no, he can trump block the 2 large units and then basically be dead.
Yeah. And here Bartolo showing off where he's not so good is just simply a 2/2 with Aegis. Not ideal. Doesn't get stunned here at least, but still pretty dead.
Yeah, Bruised by God forced to play out his entire hand. Bruised by God, or Marius knows that he can just attack in without any cares, and he's just going to be sitting there with a full board and Bruised by God facing down lethal.
Yeah, Bruised by God not going to find anything that gets him out of this spot and scoops it up. We're going to go to game 2 here. This is top 8, so it's best of 5. That means we're not sideboarding just yet. We're just going to get to run back this matchup, and then we get to do sideboards after that, although it looks like maybe Bruised by God didn't get the memo, so we've got to make sure we clear that up and don't have any misboarded games here. It looks like Marius is on that.
Yeah, he's about to tell him. The classic no.
Yeah.
But so this matchup is kind of interesting because Impending Doom and Valkyrie Spire Guard are kind of slow normally. It's like, oh, okay, I don't really play. I play maybe an Instigator, or I just like play a bunch of Inspires and Seek Powers in the early game, and then I on turn 4 drop a threat, which is normally really slow versus like maybe an aggro deck or something like that. Like that's why the falchions are super important in this deck. But against TJP, that they're also setting up for like a good portion of the early to mid game. And if they don't have an answer to whatever threat you drop on 4, they can take a ton of damage.
Yeah, taking to the skies was a good strategy for this weekend. Not quite the most aggressively tilted skies deck that you can think of. Like normally you think of Eager Outlet and Tinker Overseer, but nothing wrong with just waiting to set up some big 6/6 and 5/5 flyers on turn 4 instead.
No, this deck is more like it functions similarly to how like you would imagine mid-range Rakano to function.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Except that actual mid-range Rakano doesn't function, but you know.
No, but this is where we get to see what Bartolo does, right? Sometimes Sandstorm Titan can stop a lot of things from attacking, but it's not going to stop the Seducer.
Yeah, exactly. He's got the Cersos, he's got the Sandstorm Titans, he's got the Scouting Party, he's got combat locked up, and Bartholo is just not going to engage in combat with Marius's units at all, and he's going to have the
Crucially here,
Falchion to support it.
Bruised by God does not get to play the Falchion and just go to town this turn. Instead, does find the 4th power, but it's Vera's favor and can't quite do what he wants with that. Now he's got to choose whether he wants to equip up this Bart and start racing that way, or play a Slay or get a Flyer. I don't like the Flyer, and yeah, opts to just Falchion up Bart and start going to town.
He has to go for it. He's worried about maybe like Desert Marshal Vanquish, and he wants to leave up Protect, but he just can't afford to, and he knows it.
So now we just play the I have Protect and a unit that you can't race game here. Oh, no, it's looking like he's thinking about playing Spire Guard.
Yeah, he's got a few options here. He would have loved to have drawn Power, really, but, you know, we can't have what we want always.
Yeah, honestly, I would play Falchion over Spire Guard here just to turn it into a 2-turn clock. But I guess Falchion next turn accomplishes the same thing. So honestly, what I would just do there is Slay, hold up Protect, and make them have an answer to Bart. And then next turn, if they don't, Lethrai Falchion kills.
Yeah, I think all of those are viable lines of play.
Yeah.
I think Valkyrie Spire Guard is just kind of the middle ground where you just want to get it out of your hand. But yeah, definitely all of them get him there. And there it is. He makes a 10 attack lifesteal Bartholo, and Marius can't interact at all.
Yeah, Bart is a naturally fun and interactive card, and we got to have a blast with it that game. And now we finally get to sideboard now that these players are tied up 1-1. So guess if you're the TJP mid-range deck, you're just going to bring in some more Vanquishes, get rid of your Stand-Togethers because you don't care about Harsh Rule, and figure out what threats you want to play here that can race these big flyers.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be pretty rough. I think you probably want... Oh, man, he doesn't have Wasps or anything. Yes, Stand-Together is obviously not very good, and you obviously want Permafrost and Vanquish, but you're against a deck that has 4 Protects. You're going to get blown out at some point during the game. Your best card is Carnosaur, and you don't have any more to bring in.
Yeah, this is the beauty of having a 4 finest 4 Protect deck. I've done that myself in this Eternal Tournament series before, and it can be a real pain for a lot of decks, especially when your threats are already naturally very large, like we see here at Impending Doom, Valkyrie's Fireguard, Inquisitor, Mokto with Protect. That's some delicious stuff.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Also notable that Protect isn't just protecting from Vanquish, it's protecting from things like Surso triggers that you're maybe counting on, things like that. So it's a really flexible card, even against a deck that maybe doesn't have as much removal as you think, or burn spells that you naturally think about. I'm pretty sure this Argenport mid-range deck is still going to keep in some number of them. Do you see them changing up their threats at all? Like maybe it looks like they're cutting down on the Instigators.
Oh, for what? I see. Okay. I don't think he's going to bring in Bailiffs. I don't like cutting down on threats just because this deck has so few units and you need a unit to get going. But admittingly, Instigator doesn't do very... If there's ever a matchup where Instigator wasn't useful, it's this one.
Yeah, like how often is Instigator going to be better than an Annihilator or a Vanquish here?
Yeah, absolutely. I still worry about just not drawing a unit for too many turns, but I think he'll be okay.
Yeah, it's it could throw off the balance of the deck as you mentioned, but at the same time, if on most board states a 3/3 is a dead card, well, you're better off putting a not dead card in and just trying to assume almost like not really the control thing here, but really almost a combo approach where it's like, I'm going to get a unit, it's going to stick, and I'm going to deal with everything else I see.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mid-range combo Voltron type deck, similar to how Rakano plays out sometimes. It's like more the Aegean list that we saw at one point in time.
So it looks like players just finishing up, making sure, making a list, checking it twice, and sending out the challenge here.
Turns out Instigator's naughty, not nice, so that's why it got cut. Let's see. Oh yeah, so another thing, Marius doesn't have any killer as well. Not that TJP typically runs that. It's more Praxis or Xenon or something, because they have different removal suites. They don't have access to Permafrost or Vanquish usually. But not having killer also is pretty rough for him because it's just going to be really difficult for him to remove all these units through Protect.
Yeah, Bruce by God's got a tough mulligan decision here and opts to keep it. It has the power and the fixing, but it's going to develop slowly here. But at least have a turn 2 Instigator if he so desires, and that's looks like what's going to happen here. In the meantime, Marius has at least has an excellent opener here. Turn 2 Awakened Student into turn 2 False Prince. That's as good as it gets in this TJP
that's
list.
That's the dream. That's the dream of TJP, curving Awakened Student into False Prince. That's why you play these cards, because you live in magical fantasy land where you just have double time and Primal and a Justice on turn 3 every game, and you just play the 2 best units on curve in the game. Seraph also there.
Yeah, opts to go with Seraph instead of False Prince. That's fine too. Doesn't die to the...
to Vanquish.
To Vanquish or to Vera's favor as well. So
or Protect. Doesn't die to Protect
as well. So just getting the reliable threat and keeping up the pressure here as Bruce by God gets to protect a prince and turn it into a frog with an agent.
I mean, if Marius had weapons in his deck, it'd be a threatening frog, but not the case.
Bruce by God's in an awkward spot here where he could just falchion up this Instigator, but then it's exposed to every removal. But if he wants to develop the Bart, you don't get to do anything else this turn.
Yeah, I think you develop the Bart. Like, you're going to take a ton of damage, But that's how you win, right? That's how you're
Right.
playing to win here, rather than just like hoping to maybe find some other win. Also, this is a big falchion.
Yeah, this will be a 14 life swing essentially. He may even opt to like, oh, man, he's hoping to find power there and maybe go like Slay plus Vanquish here and really try and manage this board. And now, he's thinking like, this is why we talked about cutting this instigator, right? It's just not doing anything here.
Yeah, the instigator is definitely not doing anything on this board. I mean, it's stopping maybe the Desert Marshal and the Frog, but it's not that big a deal. The big problem is clearly Seraph and Awakened Student. And doesn't really even chump block well, just because you take damage from it.
Yeah, so Bruised by God goes all the way down to 4. This Bartolo's Aegis is down. Could have went down to 3, but they missed that. But now he finds that 5th power and gets to throw out 2 removal spells here if he so desires. And I imagine he does. So, and that'll also get him some Argenport Instigator triggers, which is...
Yeah, so drawing that 5th power was a huge swing for Bruised by God, because he goes from being able to play 1 card per turn to 2. Mm-hmm. And at this stage in the game, that's huge, because now he's putting Marius at a 2-turn clock, or he's dead next turn, and he's going up to 11, and he's gonna just barely be out of lethal thanks to the second removal spell, or being able to play the Valkyrie Enforcer.
Yep. So Marius goes down to 4 here. Bruised by God opts to play a unit instead of just simply trotting out a Slay here. Not the biggest fan of that line of play, especially when you've got like an Instigator in hand, but it's got to work out anyway. Marius only has a scouting party to show, and Bartolo does what Bartolo does against time decks, which is be unblockable, get a falchion, and kill you.
Yeah, and Bruised by God just showing the brutal efficiency of the combo in his deck of just the Thrive Falchion on an evasive unit and a lot of Aegis, And they're getting right into game 3 here without sideboard.
This will be game 4. Bruised by God is now up 2-1.
Okay,
they just took the first post board game, and it's got the combo, as we keep referring to it as, Bart plus Falchion, and that's enough to keep a hand.
Yeah, and so this is another Awakened
another amazing opener.
Oh my God!
Will it matter this time? Because it didn't last time.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll be able to race Bart, because this time he's not on the play, and that means he's gonna have to deal with this 6-attack lifesteal Bart on attacking first. Really,
I think I would have opted to play False Prince there and then just play both my suits the next turn, but whatever.
I mean,
it's
I'm
minor.
very greedy. I'm very greedy, and I would have played the student first. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, anyways, Bruised by God has assembled what he wants to assemble, and Marius finds a second piece of interaction, and down goes Bart, and now this game is very, very different.
Oh, yes, it is. Bruised by God needs something fast. He's going to be facing down one of the fastest clocks you can assemble, and he's just got nothing. His Annihilate doesn't hit it hits Sandstorm Titan. It doesn't hit False Prince or any of these 3 Awakened students.
Yeah. Crucially here, though, gets to play a 3/3 down and hold up Finest Hour, which will take out the 5/5 Awakened student. And then the Spire Guard will come down as a 6/6 next turn and be bigger than everything Marius has. So this is kind of the...
That's true.
Bart was plan A, and this is deck showing off that it has a plan B, unlike other Bartolo decks.
True, but now Crystallize is a real card again. Circe is a real card again. Obelisk is a real card again. Marius gets to do the TJP thing now that Bart's off the table.
Yep. Bruised by God opting to bluff Protected, and I don't like that. Yeah, I was just inspired first, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Finds a sigil, and Marius crucially finding another Vanquish. These have been clutch this game.
Oh yeah, Vanquish is one of the best cards that Marius could ask for in this matchup.
Mm-hmm.
Other than dealing with all the Aegis, but he just got through it. And Bruised by God just did not draw another Protect or another Aegis unit.
So Impending Doom stops the attacks, but keeps the damage coming, as it'll deal a damage to Bruised by God here. It'll need to find another Falchion to put on it to cancel that out. In the meantime, Marius trots out the last student, pumps that up, and now we just sit and wait.
Yep, he's got the 6-turn clock going.
Yep. There's the Bart. he can't really swing with any flyers here, or he dies on the crackback. So
Yep.
a tough spot for Bruised by God to be in here. He's got to find essentially a Lethrai Falchion to close this game out.
Yeah, it's basically Lethrai Falchion or bust. Even if he gets another blocker to play, another large unit, he doesn't have like Warcries on the top of his deck or anything. So it's got to be a Valkyrie Spire Guard basically, because it's the only thing that's not going to be dealing more damage to him, and it's going to be big enough to block. Or I guess Mokto might be okay.
Yeah. Opting to get in for 3 here. He'll go down to 5 damage, but has a 6/6 to block and basically has to chump block with the Bartolo here if Marius decides to give up the False Prince to get in that little bit of extra damage, which I think makes sense against an Impending Doom clock.
Yeah, absolutely. Puts him 2 turns to dead.
And not just 2 turns to dead, as he whiffs on that draw means he is just dead.
Yep.
And
Regular.
we'll even this up 2-2 going to the 5th game. So as we saw there, post-board, Marius crucially gets to bring in a couple extra vanquishes, and their impact was felt that game.
Oh yeah, that game went back and forth. Marius, Bruised by God had nothing, and then he drew a Valkyrie Enforcer, which just turned on his Fire Guard, and then Marius drew the Vanquish, and then they got the Impending Doom to sort of stabilize the second, and then it just eventually fell apart for Bruised by God.
Yep, just a little too much pressure. Bruised by God couldn't keep up. The Bartolo didn't quite gain him enough life before he went down, and yeah, those early Awakened students providing that really strong pressure. That's been key here for Marius, where, the one game didn't quite have the interaction needed to deal with Bart, but every game has had a really nice start in terms of just having those 2 and 3 drops early to at least have a shot at racing.
So do you think there's a real aggressor in this matchup, or do you think that it kind of depends on what hand each player gets?
Yeah, it's a good question. But we'll see. Bruised by God's thinking about this hand because it doesn't have double shadow. It's got all the pieces you want. It's got the Bart, the Lethrai Falchion, a weapon, or an Impending Doom, but it doesn't have that double shadow yet, and he's going to bank on finding it. In the meantime, Marius again has the Awakened students and good fixing, but not quite as fast this time, but at least on the play to make up for it.
He still gets to play False Prince on turn 2 if he so chooses, but he can't play the Awakened Student first, like before.
But Marius has all the fixing that they desire. In the meantime, Bruised by God does not. He'll at least get to play this Bartolo out, but doesn't have the Shadow Source yet and is desperately hoping to find it on his next draw step.
I think in the overarching game plan of both decks, Bruised by God is the aggressor because his late game, like Mokto or Recurring or whatever, isn't quite as strong as, Seraph and Obelisk and Scouting Party. But, obviously this game, as we've seen every single time, it's Marius plays 2 drops, so he's aggressive for a second, and then Bruised by God has to turn it around and
looks like we just had a misplay there. Bruised by God, maybe not realizing he didn't have Finest Hour up, just blocked with Bartolo with a chump block, and that's an issue. That's gonna cost throwing away a Bartolo in this matchup is not what you want to do.
Absolutely not. And now he's got to find another way out of this game. Impending Doom is okay in the face of Marius's hand, which is really not very aggressive. Impending Doom might get him there, but he would much prefer to have this Bart still and be able to throw this Falchion on it right now.
Yeah, no, that is going to be the story of this game, is just losing a Bart for essentially no reason, right? But doesn't mean Bruised by God is going to lose this game by any means. Marius choosing to not play Calimdir Healer there when he knows he's going to be playing like Xenonobolist the next turn is a little odd pressure-wise, but I'm not sure why he held it up, but maybe we'll find that out later. But here comes the Calimdir Healer, or not, whatever. Calimdir Acolyte 2 works. Yeah, there's an Obelisk with a bunch of units in play, and Bruised by God somehow has to race this, I guess.
I mean, he can do it. It's just one Vanquish. One Vanquish is really the game for him.
Yeah, it successfully negates the downside of Impending Doom as well. He'll deal 1 damage to himself and gain it back immediately. So yeah, Marius hoping to find a Vanquish, and a scouting party is a way to dig for it.
Actually, this is really just 2 Mokdos and another Falchion. Even if Marius, like, no matter how big of a board
Bruised by
Marius
God
puts
has
out,
lethal, right?
yeah, Bruised by God
Oh,
has lethal next turn.
he had lethal with Falchion plus Finest Hour and did not go for it.
You're correct. You're correct.
He had the 7 extra damage, did not do it. Maybe just a little off after just a long day of play, and also that Bartolo block still hanging in his head. Just didn't quite see it. Saw instead on the board a bunch of 3/3 Yetis and just forgot, hey, I can kill my opponent here.
Yeah, he just had a really powerful draw this game. I mean, both players are pretty powerful draw, but the lifesteal plus just all these big units is just that Marius can't do anything about because they're crystallize.
Wow.
I don't think he's gonna. I'm not sure if he's gonna. Yeah, he's gonna play that.
Yeah, Marius fighting crystallize is almost certainly gonna lock this game up. I don't. Now he would have Bruised by God would have to silence his own unit and kill the 4/7. Yeah, wow. What a
turnaround. That was a game that probably should have been won for several reasons. That 2 plays could have won Bruised by God that game, and just 1 turn, or those 2 extra turns that it probably got him, is just enough for Marius to find crystallize, which gets him lethal.
Yeah, Bruised by God, looking at the state of this game, doesn't see a way out, and I expect a scoop is coming here. Yep, there it is, the worthy foes, and rough ending there for Bruised by God, but Marius gets to move on, probably sweating bullets that whole game, but piloted it well. I think didn't really have any major misplays that I saw, and ultimately triumphs in the
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the player who played that tighter ended up winning that game.
Yeah, so congrats to Bruised by God, though, for making the top 8 and bringing a really sweet list that I would play on ladder, except it plays Bartolo. So I sworn a vow to never play him. I keep opening him in packs.
You're not the only person who I've heard have some fighting words against Bartolo. He's definitely a hotly contested card.
It's good to have villains, right? Some people hate Sandstorm Titan, where I don't mind him. I don't know. I just like to throw barbs at Bart. He's a nice guy, I'm sure. Fun to hang out with. Just not my type.
I mean, he doesn't look like a nice guy. Let's be honest. Come on.
Okay, well, we'll get into that later.
He looks a little conniving, a little too cunning to be a good friend.
It looks like that was the last match. The rest of them have been settled. So let's go over the results real quick here. Looks like Ogre Man took down Ilya K. Ogre Man moves on his Praxis mid-range list. The other TJP mid-range list, Ilya K was on, gets eliminated out of top 8. We just saw Marius take down Bruised by God. Hulkbuster, who is on Macdo Armory, takes out Danny Boar, who was on JPF Control. And Notorious GHP on FTJ Control. Lots of letters here. Takes out the undefeated 6-0 Eternal Hans. Eternal Hans on Chalice goes down to FTJ Control. So there we go. Congrats to the players, Notorious GHP, Hulkbuster, Marius, and Ogre Man. They are moving on to the semifinals, which we will get to in just a moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Some interesting results there. Ilya K losing is a little bit of a surprise, but Notorious GHP moving on is kind of expected.
Yep, so we'll see if more unexpected results come up in the next round. This is Sir Rhino and Calimdir signing off.